Okay, so what if the true meaning of Christmas isn't just about celebrating something that happened 2,000 years ago? What if it's actually a call to action for today? Well, we're about to dive into a really fascinating, pretty provocative Christmas sermon from 1976. And believe me, it completely flips the script on God's plan, Jesus' mission, and even the future of the world. So let's jump right in.
Right out of the gate, this sermon makes this huge claim. It says, hey, this isn't just any old Christmas. It's a super important moment in what it calls God's dispensation, which is basically a term for God's grand overarching strategy for all of history. Okay, so if this is such a big deal, you gotta wonder, what exactly is this master plan?
All right, so first up, let's talk about God's unchanging blueprint. The whole sermon, the entire thing, is built on this one central idea. God had a perfect original plan for the world. And this is the important part. That plan has never, ever changed. Not one bit.
So the sermon throws out this huge question, right? It asks, has God's original vision for the world, his perfect plan, actually come to pass? And the answer it gives is just a blunt, straight up no. And why not? Well, it all comes down to one single pivotal event, what it calls the fall of man. It claims that one event derailed God's entire plan, right from the very beginning. Okay, so if the original plan went off the rails, what's God been up to ever since? The sermon's answer is actually pretty simple. One word: restoration. And this is a really key idea. It's not about God coming up with some plan B. Nope. It's about God working tirelessly, all throughout history, to get us back to the original plan A. And this comparison here really lays out the core conflict, doesn't it? On one side, you've got God's original ideal, one united world, everything in harmony. But then you look at the other side. That's the fallen state, our reality as the sermon sees it. A world just chopped up by national and language barriers, where people feel disconnected from God, living these, quote, random, wandering lives. It's a pretty stark difference.
And here's the real kicker. This blueprint, it's totally non-negotiable. The sermon is crystal clear on this point. God isn't going to lower his standards to meet us. It's a one-way street. It is up to humanity to rise up and meet that original perfect ideal.
Okay, so if all of history is about getting back to plan A, where does Jesus fit into all this? This is where the sermon takes a turn that I think might surprise a lot of people. It offers a very specific and, you could say, pretty unconventional view of his mission.
So, according to the sermon, God's strategy was this 4-step process. Think of it like a ripple in a pond. It all had to start with one perfected individual, a new Adam, if you will. From that one person, the perfection would spread out, first to their family, then to their nation, and finally, enveloping the entire world. Now, get ready, because this next point is probably the most radical claim in the whole sermon. It argues that the crucifixion was not part of God's plan at all. Instead, it was a tragic failure, a failure on humanity's part that just stopped the mission dead in its tracks. It was stuck at step 1, preventing Jesus from ever expanding his work to the family, national, and world levels. So if you accept that premise, that Jesus' original mission was cut short, then the sermon draws a really clear conclusion. A second coming isn't just some vague possibility. It's a logical necessity. Someone has to come and finish the job. And the sermon is super specific about what the task of this second coming is. A lot of people think of judgment, fire, and brimstone, but that's not it at all. According to this, it's a constructive mission. The goal is to pick up right where things left off 2,000 years ago and finally complete all 4 of those stages of restoration. And this quote really ties it all together beautifully. What it's saying is there's this single golden thread running through all of human history. The goal for Adam, the goal for Jesus, and the goal for the second coming. It's all the same. The mission has been constant. It's just the person carrying the baton who changes. All right, so this is where it gets really interesting for the modern day. What role does Christianity play in this huge ongoing plan? The sermon has a very specific answer. The sermon draws this direct historical parallel. It argues that, look, just like ancient Israel was prepared for 2,000 years to receive Jesus, Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years being prepared for a new role, to be the foundation to receive the second coming. But then, the sermon issues a pretty direct challenge. It asks, are modern Christians really focused on the right goal? It questions whether this focus on just getting your own personal salvation, getting your own, quote, chunk of heaven, is really what God is looking for. And the answer it gives is a big, resounding no. The sermon argues that God's target isn't small, it's global. The mission isn't just about saving one person, or one church, or even one nation. It's about tackling the problems of the entire world.
And it doesn't just leave it at that. The sermon gets super specific, identifying what it calls God's three big headaches, the major crises facing the world back in 1976.
And here they are. You have to remember the context. This is 1976, right in the thick of the Cold War. So the three key battlegrounds that identifies are first, the global spread of communism. Second, what it saw as a spiritual decline within Christianity itself. And third, the moral degradation of young people.
And then comes the sermon's ultimate, central claim. It asserts that the Unification Church was a movement raised up by God for this exact moment in history, that it was meant to be a new champion with the very specific mission of tackling these three big global problems head on. So, okay, after that massive overview of all of history, the sermon brings it right back down to the individual. What does all of this mean for you and me celebrating Christmas? What, according to this view, is the true spirit of Christmas?
And so it poses this really direct question to everyone in the audience, a challenge that pulls together everything we've just talked about. And the answer it gives just completely shifts the focus. It says the way to do it isn't about seeking your own personal salvation. It's about dedicating your entire life to a public mission. It's about becoming, and this is a direct quote, a willing sacrifice for the salvation of the rest of the world. And there it is. That's the final redefinition of Christmas. In this worldview, the holiday isn't just about looking back and celebrating something that happened long ago. It becomes an active pledge to jump in and continue that unfinished historic mission, the mission to restore the world and, as the sermon says, to finally liberate the heart of God himself from his long-standing sorrow.
And that's where the sermon leaves us, with this final, incredibly provocative challenge. It's a question of just immense scale, and it's a call to action that really aims to transform Christmas from just a day of remembrance into a starting line for a global mission.